Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and I'm back with another review. And this time, I saw The Bodyguard. This is a 1992 drama thriller film directed by Mick Jackson, and it stars Kevin Costner, Whitney Houston, Gary Kemp, and Bill Cobbs. In this film, a former Secret Service agent grudgingly takes an assignment to protect a pop idol who's threatened by a crazed fan. At first, the safety-obsessed bodyguard and the self-indulgent diva totally clash, but before long, all that tension sparks fireworks of another sort, and the love-averse tough guy is torn between duty and romance. So, what did I think of The Bodyguard? Well, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was decent. I think there were definitely some things they could have done here to make this feel a bit fresher, because this feels like a story you've seen a million times, where you have somebody looking after somebody, they fucking hate each other at first, and then they become romantic interests, and that's barely even a plot point in this. But I guess I'll get to that. Let me get to the actors. Um, Sorry if I seem off. I know it's been a couple days since my last review. Happens. I do these when I feel like it. Kevin Costner is Frank Farmer, former Secret Service, blah blah blah. He does a decent job. I've never been that huge on Kevin Costner. I liked him in Silverado. That's possibly his best acting I've seen him in. I've seen him do. He was good in The Highwayman, good in Bull Durham. I'll have to think of more things I've seen him in. You know what? Mr. Brooks. That is very, very possible. That's my favorite leading role of his, because that is one of my favorite movies. Um, but he does an all right job in the role. It's not a really that special of a role. It's mostly just, oh, he has to look after her and he's a tough guy, that whole thing. Um, Whitney Houston plays Rachel Marin, who's basically just Whitney Houston. Um, I've heard a lot of people dog on her performance, and my ultimate thoughts are she's fine. There aren't any scenes where I feel like she's awful, really. Maybe at the end it's a bit much where she says, "That's my bodyguard." Like it's supposed to be like a cheer moment, but and there's a bit where a character dies and she's like sad for one scene and then the next scene she's just over it. I will say that was a bit weird. Maybe it was the direction, but um I think overall she was fine. Gary Kemp plays Cy Spector, who's her publicist, I think. He's not that good. He's very over the top, British, annoying. And Bill Devaney, who's a friend of uh Frank's that gets him to do the job. I always like Bill Cobbs. He's always a nice face to see in films like this, especially. But Hmm. The Bodyguard. This is a movie that's kind of infamous. It's kind of infamous among especially the music world, because back when this film came out, it was a big deal. Whitney Houston's first film in the leading role because she's mostly a singer. And in the film, you're supposed to buy that she is an Academy Award winning actor. Now, I don't give a fuck about the Academy Awards. I really don't. I don't think they hold any actual things over my enjoyments of any movie, because I saw Parasite, which was like, oh, this is such a great foreign film that it has to win Best Picture. And you know, they did that to make people think that the Oscars, that was oh, guys, we can't be racist. We gave it to an Asian film. You know exactly that's what it was. And I don't even hate that film. I hate the second half of it. I loved the first half of it. I just wish it kept going with that. But the second half, it lost its entire message and its entire like train of thought, like I did watching the movie. But I don't give a fuck what the Oscars say. But I'm supposed to buy that Whitney Houston is an Academy Award winning actress. I know films do this all the time. But if you're gonna do something like that, I wish they would have gone with the original casting, which was apparently Steve McQueen as the bodyguard and Diana Ross as the pop singer, which I think that would have worked a lot better. I've seen Diana Ross act before, and I think she does a pretty good job usually. Steve McQueen, I could take him or leave him. I like him in certain things. I think his best role I've ever seen was Thomas Crown Affair because he looks like he's having so much fun in that film. There's multiple scenes where he just looks like he's having a fucking blast. And it looks like he actually really got into the character and it wasn't just another tough guy like in Bullet, which is one of the more underwhelming classics that I've watched. I'll have to watch it again. I have the Blu-ray, so guess I'll give it another chance sometime. But Kevin Costner, again, I can take him or leave him. I think as a director, well, he's directed three things. He's directed Dances with Wolves. Sorry about that. Throat's having trouble. Open Range, Dances with Wolves, and The Postman, which I do really want to see The Postman. I've always been curious about it. But I haven't seen anything he's directed. I've seen plenty he's acted in. I think I could take him or leave him. He can be good, he can be bad. But the thing that disappoints me the most about this film is that tries to it tries to hint at a love thing. Now, I understand a lot of films like this do this, where you have, I guess usually you see it with cop movies where they'll pair a male and female cop and they start falling for each other, um, even though they have so many differences, or they're in an office and they fall for each other, office romance. The way this film does it, there's like a romance for like maybe 10 minutes. And it makes me wish that they had focused more on the thriller aspect of this because the thriller aspect ends up becoming a bit underbaked, or undercooked, if you know what I mean. Because the thriller elements of this film are the best parts of it. The bits where you're thinking like, "Oh, is that the stalker?" because she's like scared about a stalker and her people want to, protect her from the stalker. You Those scenes where the stalker shows up or where you see his car or something are legitimately intense. You feel a sense of suspense within this movie. And most of the scenes having to do with that stalker are the best scenes of the film, especially at the end. I think this film has at least a pretty satisfying conclusion, even if the movie itself is a bit, what's the term I'm looking for? Disappointing, I guess. I guess disappointing is the only word I can use. And I'm out of drink. Whatever. I'll suffer through this. Um, but yeah, like again, if you're gonna rely on the actors as much as a film like this does, again, casting Whitney Houston is not really your best bet. Again, I said she wasn't that bad, but you need more than wasn't that bad if your story isn't going to be that original or, very involving. The romance stuff, I think the best route to go would have been to find a singer at the time who was married to a decent actor. Because then you could have the chemistry. Because I don't really feel the chemistry here. Now, again, I know I gave this a decent. and it's mostly due to things near the end that I think work really well. There's some moments that are memorable to me. So I don't exactly think that this is just a okay, watchable film. I do think it's a little bit above that for sure. The film looks nice. I can always give films like this that. It looks like a movie. Um, the budget was 25 million. Not humongous, but pretty decent for that time. Um, and I'm not gonna spoil who the stalker turns out to be, but it's really, really out of left field because this character only has two scenes. Um, Now again, I don't know if that's too much of a giveaway, but there's it's one of those films where I feel like this is over 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 9 minutes. Without the credits, it is 2 hours and 5 minutes. I wish that a film like this that is this long would at least focus on both the protagonists, which are uh Frank and Rachel, and half or at least a quarter of the runtime or something like that was focused on the villain, like setting him up because only setup you get is like one scene of a character like putting together notes, and there are multiple twists than just who the stalker turns out to be, but a lot of them are very undercooked and kind of lack the impact they should have. Like when you have a twist, it should not only be a bit of a surprise to you, it should change a lot of things that you've thought throughout the film. Like the film should be, I wouldn't say the film should be lying to you, but the film should be making things just vague enough, but not so vague that it's super obvious there's going to be a twist. The way this film did it, I don't think it's that it did it too vague, but there really wasn't any build up to it. There's like one scene with one character and yeah, I feel like they're hinging a little bit too much on Whitney Houston singing because her songs play throughout the film constantly. I understand. They really wanted to sell an album. They wanted to get, oh, we've got all Whitney Houston songs on the soundtrack album, so buy it. And yes, this became the currently highest selling soundtrack album for a film ever. It sold 45 million copies at least worldwide. So you know this was a big deal. Maybe not the movie itself, the soundtrack was. And for what it is, I d- I like Whitney Houston. Everybody at this point has heard "I Will Always Love You," be it the Whitney Houston version or the Dolly Parton version. I prefer the Dolly Parton version. I think she's not as long-winded as Whitney Houston's version. I still like Whitney Houston's version. It's just I've heard it about as many times as I have "All I Want for Christmas Is You" by Mariah Carey, so I kind of don't want to hear it. But it's kind of a similar situation to a film like Eddie and the Cruisers, which I have over here. Yeah, I have both of them. Eddie and the Cruisers and Eddie and the Cruisers 2, Eddie Lives. Now, I will mention right now, I do like both of these films. I like Eddie and the Cruisers, and I really liked Eddie and the Cruisers 2. I think Eddie and the Cruisers 2 fixed a lot of problems that I had with the first, which one of my main problems with the first is that it relied way too heavily on the music, and it felt like half of the movie was just, oh, listen to this Beaver Brown Band music, which I do like the Jim Cafferty music. I really do. But they play it so much that it becomes almost a different film or something. It almost more becomes a concert film than an actual like movie trying to tell a story. if you catch my drift. And then Eddie and the Cruisers 2 decided to focus more on the story of Eddie. And I found that a lot more interesting. And overall, I thought it made for a better film. With this film, I feel a bit of a similar thing, where it's relying very heavily on Whitney Houston's music, and there are two full, like, concert scenes where you're just watching Whitney Houston perform. You don't hear her perform the whole songs. Thank God they don't pad out the film that much, but it still feels like they're heavily relying on it. But again, I don't hate this film. I think it's decent. I can just see some wasted potential in this premise in making something a bit more, I don't know, original in some respects. Because once this one character comes into the movie, it is very obvious that they are the stalker. Now, maybe that's giving away too much, but I haven't said anything about what he does. But once he comes into the film, it's very fucking obvious. Very obvious. But yeah, I don't know. If you're a fan of Whitney Houston, maybe you'll like this. I've heard she's in another movie called, was it Dreamgirls maybe? Uh Maybe it's Sparkle. Yeah, it's Sparkle. I heard that she was really good in that. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, I've just heard that. Again, don't quote me on that. But yeah, like again, a couple things I will give it. The pace isn't the worst, but it could be cut a bit. Again, the music, I do really like the music, even if it does rely on it heavily at many points, and there's some legitimately intense moments in the climax. In the last 30 minutes of the film, there are legitimately intense moments. And I wish it stuck more to that than the kind of shoddy romance that kind of goes on and off. But yeah, that was my review of The Bodyguard. If you've seen the film, let me know in the comments what you thought. If you have any requests for me to, or requests for movies for me to watch and review, let me know those in the just comments down below as well. And movie reviewer next door.